Lila Bennett came from Maplewood, a sleepy little town tucked between wheat fields and worn-out roads in rural Montana. Life there moved slowly, like the steady rhythm of wind chimes on a quiet porch. The biggest event all year was the Harvest Parade, and Lila had never seen more than 2 stoplights in one place. She was 25, with eyes that held more hope than reason and a quiet smile she wore like armor. Raised by her grandmother Nora after losing her parents young, Lila had grown up on warm apple pie, secondhand books, and the kind of love that stitched you together even when the world tried to pull you apart. But now, Nora was fading. Her heart was failing, and the surgery that could save her cost $80,000. Lila had managed diner jobs, odd freelance gigs, and sewing commissions from the townsfolk, but her savings barely scraped the surface. Dreams didn't cover hospital bills. She'd always sketched quietly in notebooks, clothes, storefronts, lives she might one day live. But reality had never let her get far, until desperation pushed her into unfamiliar territory. Meanwhile, hundreds of miles away in the steel skyline of Rainmere, Adrian Wolfe sat at the helm of Wolfe Dynamics, a tech empire founded by his grandfather, Richard Wolfe. At just 26, Adrian had the kind of presence that made people stand straighter when he walked in. He was brilliant, ruthless, and untouchable, by design. He didn't have time for distractions, especially not for love. His parents' toxic, high-profile divorce had turned the word marriage into a warning sign. So when his grandfather passed and the reading of the will revealed an unexpected clause, Adrian's world tilted. To retain control of Wolfe Dynamics, Adrian had to be legally married before his 27th birthday. If not, the company would be handed over to the board, men with gleaming cufflinks and hidden agendas who'd waited years to strip him of his power. It wasn't about companionship. It was about control. So Adrian approached the problem like any other, strategically. He contacted a private agency known for its confidentiality and results. The arrangement? Simple. Find someone willing to sign a marriage license, stay married for 1 calendar year, then walk away. No strings, no expectations, no risks. On the other side of the state, Lila stumbled across the very same agency while searching online for miracle grants and last resort funding. What she found instead was a proposal she never expected. Marry a stranger for 1 year, receive compensation that could cover her grandmother's surgery and then some. No romantic entanglement required. Her hand hovered over the dotted line for a long time. Her heart ached at the thought of marrying someone she would never even meet. But her fear of losing Nora was greater than any discomfort. She signed. So did Adrian. They exchanged a few formal messages, coordinated logistics, and handled the paperwork through proxies. No names, no photos, a courthouse, a legal document, 2 strangers bound by ink. Lila wired the money directly to the hospital. Nora was scheduled for surgery the following week, and life continued. Weeks passed. Lila arrived in Rainmere with a thin folder of design sketches, a second-hand laptop, and whatever savings she hadn't sent to the hospital. She had an interview, an unlikely chance at Wolfe Dynamics. The building was a tower of glass and quiet power, looming above the city like it had nothing to prove. Lila stood in the lobby, her floral dress a soft rebellion against the sea of tailored black and gray around her. She could feel the stares, the whispers. One, louder than the rest, came from a woman with heels sharp enough to cut glass. Sienna Drake, senior designer, poison in a power suit. "Who let the thrift shop in?" she muttered, her posse laughing behind manicured hands. Lila's cheeks flushed, but she kept her head high. She hadn't come this far to be embarrassed by people who'd never lived a single day in her shoes. Upstairs in a corner office with a sweeping view of Rainmere Bay, Adrian Wolfe scrolled through his phone. A text from his wife lit up the screen. "You're stingy, you know. At least pretend we're married." He smirked. "Mine's worse." Always whining about money. A low chuckle escaped him, one of the few. There was a knock at the door. "Mr. Wolfe," said Theo Marsh, his ever-efficient assistant. "Interviews begin in 10. Adrian barely looked up. His mind was already elsewhere, on time slipping away, on contracts, on everything that mattered, which, for now, did not include the woman he'd married and never met. As Adrian Wolf inched closer to the deadline that would decide the future of Wolf Dynamics, he had no idea that somewhere downstairs, a young woman in a faded floral dress was stepping into the elevator with her entire life folded inside a worn sketchbook. This was where it all began. Lila Bennett, a small-town dreamer from Maplewood, Montana, still carried the scent of wheat fields and wood smoke in her hair. And Adrian Wolf, the steely-eyed CEO of Rainmere's towering tech empire, was running out of time to secure his birthright. They were strangers, linked by a secret neither of them understood. She was fighting for her grandmother's life. He was clinging to the company he was never supposed to inherit. And a paper-thin marriage, unseen and unexplored, held them together. It wasn't supposed to mean anything. But fate has its own ideas. Lila stepped out of the elevator and into Wolf Dynamics, blinking beneath fluorescent lights and corporate stares. Her palms were damp, her dress wrinkled from a sleepless bus ride, and her heart beat far too fast. Around her, sleek suits floated by like sharks, confident, cold, and far from the quiet rhythm of Maplewood. She was here for an internship, a long shot, a miracle. A chance to turn the designs in her sketchbook into something real. But miracles have a price. Sienna Drake saw her first, perched against a desk, lips curled in a practiced smirk, heels echoing on the marble floor like punctuation marks. Well, Sienna purred, circling Lila like a cat with time to kill. Someone take a wrong turn out of a thrift store? Her entourage chuckled in chorus, all manicures and mockery. Lila felt the words sting, but she didn't flinch. She tightened her grip on her sketchbook like it was armor. "I'm here for the interview," she said quietly. Calm, clear. The interview room felt like an aquarium. Glass walls, cold furniture, zero warmth. Lila sat facing a panel of polished faces who barely glanced at her resume before firing questions like a firing squad. No degree? No professional background? Why here? Why now? She spoke about design, about building beauty from scraps, about color and emotion and storytelling through thread. But their eyes glazed over. Unseen behind a one-way mirror, Adrian stood with arms folded, watching. He wasn't supposed to be there. Hiring interns wasn't his concern, but something in her file had pulled him in. The unfiltered honesty in her letter, maybe. The rawness of someone asking for a chance, not pity. He didn't know she was the woman who shared his name on a marriage license, the woman who replied to his sarcastic texts, never guessing the man on the other end was him. Downstairs, HR handed Lila a badge with a grunt. "You're under Sienna Drake," the rep muttered. "Don't be late." That was it. No welcome. No handshake. No one expected her to last. Day one was brutal. Sienna dumped a pile of busy work on her desk like it was garbage duty. Coffee runs, document filing, tasks designed to shrink a person. "Don't unpack," Sienna said with a gleam. "Small towns girls don't survive here." Lila smiled, thin, steady. She bit her lip and got to work. She wasn't here to prove them wrong. Not yet. She was here for Nora, for every breath her grandmother still had left. But the whispers followed her through the office like shadows. Cheap knockoff. Maplewood charity case. Loud enough to hurt, quiet enough to deny. Then came the elevator moment. Late evening. Office nearly empty. Lila was lugging a heavy box of files when the elevator doors opened. Inside stood Mr. Hawthorne, the janitor, his hands resting on his mop like a tired soldier leaning on a cane. The box slipped, papers scattered. "Oh no, please, I've got it," Lila said, kneeling beside him. "Nonsense, miss," he said kindly, already helping. "Folks don't usually see me. Nice to be noticed." She smiled, genuine this time, and together they gathered the mess. He told her stories about old Rainmere, the city that existed before the glass towers rose. His voice was slow and warm, like a radio left on in the background of a life. Neither noticed the man who stepped into the hallway just then. Adrian Wolf. He didn't interrupt. He didn't speak. But he watched, from the shadows, as Lila laughed softly with the janitor no one else acknowledged. He was used to people stepping over Hawthorne, not kneeling beside him. And for the first time in weeks, Adrian paused. He didn't know her name. Not yet. But something told him he would. She was supposed to be invisible. But the way Lila knelt beside the old janitor, how she listened, smiled, helped without hesitation, it stayed with Adrian long after he left the hallway. It wasn't dramatic, it wasn't loud, but it flickered inside him like the last light before dusk. He couldn't explain it. So he didn't try. That night, in a shoebox apartment on the edge of Rainmere, Lila collapsed onto a rented cot with springs that creaked like floorboards. Her hands ached, her heart heavier still. She unlocked her phone and typed a message to the one person she could speak to, her mystery husband. Work was brutal. My boss is a tyrant, and I think the entire floor wants me gone. Across the city, Adrian lounged in his glass-walled penthouse, the skyline sprawling like a promise he couldn't quite trust. Her text lit up his screen. He smirked, thumbs dancing in reply. Bunny, mine's always nagging. You'd think I married a complaint hotline. They vented in brief bursts, sarcastic remarks and tired truths. Strangers, connected by ink and legality, finding comfort in the only place neither of them expected, each other. Lila laughed, genuinely. For the first time that day, something felt okay. And Adrian, though he'd never admit it, felt something shift. Something warm. The next morning, the temperature dropped again. Sienna Drake strutted into the design wing like a queen surveying her court. On her way to her desk, she accidentally spilled her latte across Lila's sketches. "Oh no," she said with syrupy sarcasm. "Guess you'll have to start over." Her eyes gleamed. Lila stared down at the damage, smeared graphite, warped pages, and took a shaky breath. She didn't snap. Years of scraping by in Maplewood had forged her in quiet fires. She simply gathered what she could and kept going. Adrian, passing by en route to a board meeting, caught the tail end of the scene. His eyes narrowed. "Enough," he said. Quiet, firm, lethal. Sienna froze. The smirk drained from her face. Lila looked up, startled. But Adrian never met her eyes. He just walked on. She didn't know why he'd spoken, didn't know that, for the first time, she'd unsettled the most untouchable man in the building. Weeks passed. Lila found her rhythm, a fragile kind of belonging carved out through long hours and quiet resolve. She stayed late, refined her designs, and built her place in silence. Adrian watched from afar, more than he admitted. The texts between them, husband and wife in name only, grew longer. Softer, realer. Neither knew the other's identity, but both found solace in the anonymous warmth. Lila clung to those messages like a lifeline. In a world of cold glances and clipped commands, they reminded her she wasn't completely alone. Two souls, circling each other in the dark, unknowingly intertwined. Her desk became a fortress, papers piled high, sketches pinned with hope. She'd been there 2 months. Her fingers were stained with graphite, her confidence dented but intact. Sienna kept pushing. The jabs were sharper now. "Still here, Maplewood?" she sneered one morning, slapping a stack of revisions on Lila's desk. "You're tougher than you look, or just too clueless to quit." Lila said nothing. She was working on something bigger. A new app interface, a redesign that aimed to humanize the technology Wolf Dynamics built. Sleek, clean, intuitive, she had poured herself into every pixel and line. It was her shot. She stayed past sunset the night before the pitch, her blazer draped over her chair, her hands trembling with tired focus. Friday afternoon arrived. The conference room, glass walls, polished oak, cold eyes, waited. Lila stood at the front, blazer buttoned over a borrowed blouse. She clicked through her presentation, her voice even, her message clear. "It's about connection," she said. "About making tech feel human again." Slides of soft blue gradients and clean flowing design lit up behind her. Something shifted. The managers leaned in, eyes flickered, heads nodded. At the head of the table, Adrian sat still, masked, silent, but his fingers tapped lightly on the armrest, a tell he didn't notice. When she finished, applause broke the silence, brief but real. "Well done, Bennett," one of the managers said. Lila blinked. She smiled. Sienna across the room clenched her jaw, her hands curled into fists beneath the table. By Monday, the whispers had changed tone. Lila's design was headed for development. She was no longer a ghost in floral dresses. She was a name, and that made her dangerous. Sienna cornered her in the break room, her voice low, icy. "Think you're special now?" She hissed. "You're not. You're a fluke, and flukes don't last." She shoved past her shoulder, clipping Lila's arm. Lila exhaled slowly, hands braced on the counter. Not a fluke. A beginning. That night, fingers flying over her phone screen, Lila typed, "Did something right today. Maybe I'm not such a disaster after all." Across Rainmere, sprawled across a leather couch with the city glittering outside his penthouse windows, Adrian read the message and let a rare smile tug at his lips. "Told you, you're better than you think. My day was chaos. Too many idiots in suits." Lila smiled. Really smiled. Something in his gruff tone made her feel strangely safe. like she wasn't quite as alone in the world as she'd thought. The next day, Adrian found excuses to linger. He didn't send Theo to deliver files anymore. He brought them himself, striding past desks with practiced indifference before pausing at hers. Once he caught her humming. A gentle melody, soft and unfamiliar, something nostalgic. He didn't know why it stayed in his head for the rest of the day. He didn't know why she stayed. And then, Vivian Lang returned. Without warning, she walked into his office like she owned it. Her heels struck the floor like gavel blows, her perfume sharp, her expression sharper. "Well, hello, husband," she said coolly, tossing a document onto his desk, a forged marriage certificate. She was the woman Adrian had believed he'd married through the agency. The placeholder. The contract. "You need me," she said, voice like ice, "to lock in your inheritance, and I need $3 million to keep playing along." Adrian's jaw tensed. His fingers curled into fists. Pay her off, or dig deeper. Neither option sat well. The tension only rose during a business trip to San Francisco. He insisted Lila come. She didn't ask why. In the boardroom, she was composed and focused. Her notes, precise. Her presence, calm. Next to Adrian's commanding air, she was the quiet detail that grounded the space. Clients noticed. After the meeting, the team gathered at a rooftop bar. Lila sipped water, choosing the edge of the crowd. Sienna, was there too, all false charm and wide smiles. And while no one was watching, Sienna slipped something into Adrian's drink. A favor she'd been promised. For a cut of the payout Vivian had dangled. Adrian downed it. It didn't take long. Lila saw the shift first, his eyes losing focus, his steps faltering as he leaned heavily on the railing. "Are you all right?" she asked, steadying him. He tried to speak, but the words slurred. Then he staggered. She caught him. Barely. "Stay with me," she said, voice urgent, her small frame straining under his weight. She flagged down a cab, guiding him inside with shaking hands. The driver sped to the nearest hotel, but Adrian was fading fast. In the room, Lila dialed Theo, her breath ragged. "Something's wrong. He's burning up, his pulse. He's barely responding." "I'm on my way," Theo said. "Keep him awake." She splashed cold water on his face, whispering his name. His eyes fluttered open. "Lila," he murmured, his hand brushing hers. Something sparked between them, unspoken, unexpected. She froze, and then Theo burst through the door. The rest blurred. White walls, fluorescent lights, monitors beeping in sync with a fragile heartbeat. The doctors said it was a sedative, too much for anyone to ingest by mistake. Lila sat beside the bed, her sketchbook unopened for once, her eyes fixed on Adrian's sleeping form. When Theo returned, his face was stone. "He was drugged," he said. "Sienna was there. Vivian's been calling non-stop." Lila's stomach dropped. The pieces were falling into place. Adrian stirred, his voice hoarse. "Bennett, are you still here?" She nodded, blinking back the weight in her chest. "Couldn't leave." He looked at her, and really looked. And for the first time, something broke through the ice in his expression. Back in Rainmere, rumors swirled like wildfire. Sienna whispered poison across the office, painting Lila as a gold digger chasing the CEO, clinging to him for favors. "Shameless," she hissed, "small-town snake with no shame." Lila heard it all. She clenched her fists, held her head high, and didn't bite. She didn't have to. Adrian returned 2 days later, fully recovered and furious. He stormed into the office, his voice slicing the air like a blade. "Who was there?" he barked. "Who saw what happened?" No one answered, but he saw the guilt in their silence. That night, his phone buzzed. "Works a circus. Someone tried to take me down." Lila curled up in her tiny apartment, the glow of her phone lighting the darkness. "Same here. People suck." Two strangers, one thread, neither knowing how close they truly were. But step by hidden step, the distance between them kept shrinking. And Lila Bennett, Maplewood girl with graphite-stained fingers, was no longer just surviving at Wolf Dynamics. Her app designs were a hit, her position on the team permanent. But the real shift was happening somewhere much deeper. The victory was hers, but it didn't taste sweet. Sienna Drake stood by the window of her corner office, her polished smile slowly curdling into something darker. Jealousy coiled in her chest like a living thing, clawing at her from the inside out. She'd spent years clawing her way up through steel and stilettos, and now a no-name girl from nowhere was stealing her spotlight. She couldn't let it stand. That evening, in a shadowy bar in the industrial edges of Rainmere, Sienna met with Vivian Lang. The air was thick with smoke and bad intentions. She's in his head, Sienna snapped, swirling her drink. He's protecting her. Vivian leaned in, her voice silk and poison. Then we remove her. She slid a small envelope across the table. I'll double what I offered. You make it happen. Sienna's eyes gleamed. A plan was already blooming, slow and cruel. Lila had no idea. Her days blurred into sketches, deadlines, and late-night texts from the husband she didn't really know, but somehow deeply trusted. One afternoon, while she was hunched over her desk refining a new interface, Sienna sauntered over like a cat with something dead between its teeth. Need a quick favor, she said, tossing a napkin scribbled with an address. Client pickup, Grayport, now. Lila hesitated. The address was strange, industrial zone, off the grid. But she grabbed her coat anyway. The warehouse loomed rusted and silent when she arrived. A breeze slipped through broken windows like a warning. She stepped inside. The door creaked shut behind her. Shadows moved. Too late, hands seized her from behind. Rough, unforgiving. A figure emerged. Sienna. Her smirk was razor-sharp. Thought you could just take him from me? Her voice echoed off the concrete walls. You think you're special? They dragged Lila to a basement, cold, dim, walls stained with age. Her wrists were bound, her heart hammered. Adrian was mine first, Sienna hissed, circling like a predator. I helped him, before you ever existed. Lila blinked against the blur of panic. I don't even want him like that, she rasped. Sienna laughed, jagged and unhinged. Then she raised a metal pipe. The blow landed hard. Lila collapsed, pain ripping through her ribs as blood soaked into her blouse. Her vision dimmed, but she clung to consciousness. She thought of Nora. She couldn't die here. At Wolf Dynamics, Adrian's phone buzzed. A message from Lila, heading to Grayport, be back soon. Short. Off. Unease stirred in his chest. Hours passed, no word. Adrian called Theo. Track her, now. Minutes later, Theo's voice came through, tight. Her signal died near the old docks in Grayport. Adrian grabbed his keys. The city blurred past his windows as dread gnawed at his throat. He found the warehouse. It was too quiet. Then, a sound, a cry, muffled. He followed it, boots pounding down a rusted staircase. And there she was, crumpled against a wall, bloodied, barely conscious. Sienna stood over her, pipe in hand, ready to strike again. Stop! Adrian roared, charging forward. Sienna swung. He dodged, tackled her. They hit the ground hard, her nails clawing, shrieking, desperate. She ruined everything. Adrian held her down, breath heaving. Theo burst in with security, cuffs, shouts, flashing lights. And then Adrian was by Lila's side. Her face was pale, her breath shallow. Stay with me, he whispered, scooping her into his arms. Her blood soaked into his shirt, but he didn't care. The ambulance ride was a blur, sirens wailing, paramedics shouting. At the hospital, doctors swarmed her. She's stable, one said, pulling Adrian aside. But there's something else. A pause. She was pregnant, roughly 2 months. Adrian froze. Did you know? He shook his head. He didn't. Neither did she. The guilt hit like a punch to the chest. He sat by her bed, unable to breathe, unable to speak. Her hand was still, her eyelids fluttering. I'm so sorry, he whispered, voice breaking. I didn't protect you. She stirred, eyes opening slowly, confused. What happened? He hesitated. Not yet. Not now. You're safe, he said softly. Sienna won't hurt you again. She nodded faintly, too weak to ask more. He brushed his fingers against hers. She didn't pull away. And that was enough. For now. Back at Wolf Dynamics, Theo dug through digital trails. She didn't act alone, he said. Vivian paid her. Here, bank transfers, emails. He handed Adrian the evidence. Adrian stared down at the screen, his jaw tightening. This wasn't over. Not even close. There's more, Theo said, sliding a file onto Adrian's desk. The marriage was never legal. Adrian's jaw tightened. What do you mean? There was a paperwork error, Theo explained, tapping the folder. 3 years ago, the agency never filed the license correctly. Vivian Lang was never legally your wife. Adrian sat back in his chair, the weight of the revelation pressing down hard. If Vivian wasn't his wife, then who was? Without thinking, he picked up his phone and typed a message to the only person who grounded him anymore. Rough day. Someone got hurt. Think it's on me. Across the city, propped up in her hospital bed, Lila Bennett read the text, her fingers pausing before she replied. Not your fault. Some people are just monsters. I got hurt too. Their messages crossed through the digital noise, a fragile thread of comfort neither of them could name. Sienna was in custody now, screaming about Adrian as they hauled her away. Her obsession laid bare. Vivian had vanished, her phone disconnected, her trail cold. But none of that mattered. Adrian was where he needed to be. With her. He stood at Lila's side when she was discharged from the hospital, silent as doctors handed over her chart and prescriptions. He didn't speak much on the drive, just kept his eyes on the road, jaw clenched, the skyline of Rainmere a blur beyond the windshield. "You didn't have to do this," she said softly as they reached her apartment building. "Yeah," he said, his voice low. "I did." He helped her up the stairs, hovering near her elbow, ready to catch her if she stumbled. At her door, they paused, neither quite ready to say goodbye. "Rest," he said. "Call me if you need anything." Lila nodded. Her hazel eyes met his, something unspoken flickering between them. He lingered, then turned away, the weight of her pain and the secret he still carried, settling like lead in his chest. Back at Wolf Dynamics, Adrian threw himself into work. Glass walls, endless meetings, anything to keep from thinking. Theo knocked, face grim. "Got something big," he said, placing another folder on Adrian's desk. Adrian flipped it open. "Vivian Lang was never registered as your legal spouse," Theo said, watching him closely. "But the agency did file a marriage certificate. Same date, same time." Adrian looked up, heart thudding. "Who?" Theo didn't speak, just pointed. Adrian's eyes dropped to the page. Lila Bennett. Silence stretched. His intern. His confidant. His wife. Across town, Lila sat on the worn couch of her Portland apartment, a blanket over her lap and a dull ache still pulsing through her ribs. Her grandmother Nora shuffled in with a tray of tea. Lila's phone buzzed. "Feeling off today. You okay?" She smiled faintly and typed back. "Rough week. Got hurt, but healing." Nora squinted at her with teasing suspicion. "Is that the mystery man again?" "Just my husband," Lila said, half laughing. "The fake one." Nora chuckled, then noticed something. "Found this in your bag earlier." She nodded toward a black credit card on the coffee table. Sleek, matte, expensive. "Where'd you get that?" Lila picked it up, brows furrowed. "My boss gave it to me. Said it was for emergencies." The card glinted in the afternoon light. And then, memory. Months ago, when Nora's hospital bills piled up and Lila had run out of options, her husband, the one she only knew through text, had sent her a card just like this. Her heart stuttered. Her fingers trembled as she reached for her phone. She tapped the number, the one she'd texted hundreds of times. It rang. And upstairs in his penthouse, Adrian's phone lit up. The name unknown, but familiar. He answered. "Hello?" His voice cautious. Lila froze, then whispered. "Adrian?" Silence. Then, "Lila?" The line crackled. The world shifted. In Nora's kitchen, tea steaming and untouched, Lila dropped the phone. Eyes wide, breath caught, she stared at her grandmother. "He's my husband," she said, voice cracking. "All this time, it was him." "James Carter," Lila whispered. "My boss, the guy I've been texting, it's him." Nora blinked, then let out a hearty laugh. "Well, I'll be damned. That boy who drove you home, the one you called stingy, is the CEO." Lila nodded, still dazed. The puzzle pieces were falling into place. The late-night messages, the mutual frustration, the strange comfort she'd felt from a stranger. All this time, it had been Adrian Wolf. The man she'd worked beside for months. The man she thought she barely knew. She picked up the black credit card again, its weight suddenly different, heavier. Not just a token of generosity, but a thread. A bond. Something that had been there all along. Miles away, Adrian paced his penthouse, the Rainmere skyline a blur beyond the floor-to-ceiling windows. Theo's voice echoed in his mind. "Lila Bennett. She's your real wife." He remembered her in the elevator with Mr. Hawthorne. The calm way she handled chaos in San Francisco. The warmth of her hand in his at the hospital. It all made too much sense. And yet, it terrified him. He picked up his phone and sent a message. "We need to talk. Can we meet?" Her reply came almost instantly. "Tomorrow, my place." He exhaled. Hope and fear tangled in his chest. The next morning, Adrian arrived at her apartment, his usual suit traded for a sweater, hair still damp from the rain. Clara opened the door, her expression sly. "So you're the mystery husband," she teased, stepping aside. "Took you long enough." Inside, Lila stood with her arms folded, guarded. "Is it true?" she asked, voice steady. Adrian stepped closer. "Yeah, I didn't know either. The agency messed up. We both got caught in it." She searched his face, doubt flickering, but then her features softened. "All those texts, it was you?" she asked. He gave a faint smile. "Every word." They sat. The silence between them wasn't empty. It was full of everything they hadn't said. "Why didn't we meet?" she asked. I wanted clean lines, he admitted. Fast, simple. I thought that's what you wanted too. I needed the money, she said quietly. For Nora, I didn't care who you were. A pause, then her brow furrowed. But if you're still married, I can't be part of that, Adrian. I won't be the other woman. He leaned forward, his voice firm. You're not. Vivian was never my wife. It was a lie. You're the only one who ever was. Her breath caught. She wanted to believe him. God, she did. But shadows from Tacoma still lingered in her blood, and the fear of being hurt again held her back. Outside, the rain tapped gently against the windows. Inside, two people sat on the edge of something bigger than either of them. I love you, Adrian said, the words tumbling out, unfiltered, raw. I didn't know it was you, Lila, but somehow, it's always been you. She stepped back, shaken. You're married, she whispered. He shook his head, closing the gap between them. No, it was never real. It was for the inheritance, part of my grandfather's will. I couldn't even tell you what she looked like. I met her once, signed, walked away. Lila's voice came soft. Same here, a contract, a signature to save Nora. Their eyes met. So we're both free? She asked, barely breathing. Adrian nodded. In 3 days, the divorce paperwork clears. Then, it's just us, she murmured. She wanted to leap, to believe. But Tacoma had left scars, deep, invisible ones. I need time, she said, turning her gaze away. Adrian nodded. He respected the space. He stepped into the rain and let it carry his silence down the steps. Back in Rainmere, chaos erupted. Vivian Lang stormed into Wolf Dynamics, her smile ablaze. You think you can erase me? She spat, slamming forged documents onto Adrian's desk. I'll take half your company if you walk away. Adrian stood slowly, voice like ice. You were never my wife. Vivian's laughter was cold. Henry doesn't know that, and he'll believe me. You know how he is. Adrian did. His grandfather was old school, easily moved by drama, by tears, by manipulative charm. He turned to Theo. Get her out. Vivian was escorted away, but Adrian knew the damage was already in motion. She was calling Henry, planting seeds of doubt like landmines. That night, rain lashed the windshield as Adrian drove to Lila's again. His hands clenched on the steering wheel, his jaw tight. Whatever storm was coming, he would face it. But he had to see her again. No more hiding, no more masks, only the truth. A knock echoed through the apartment. Clara opened the door, her eyes sparkling despite the storm behind him. Fix this, boy, she said, waving Adrian inside and nodding toward Lila curled on the couch. He stepped in, rain clinging to his sweater, hair dripping, eyes locked on the only thing that mattered. He knelt before her. I meant every word, he said, voice low, trembling. You're my wife, not on paper, truly, and I'm done pretending otherwise. Lila's eyes brimmed. Her voice cracked as she whispered, I love you too. I just didn't know how to say it. They leaned in, foreheads resting together, the air stilling between them. For a moment, nothing else existed but breath and belonging. Until a crash. Glass shattered. The living room window exploded inward, shards raining like jagged stars. And then, Sienna, wild-eyed, rain-soaked, a knife clutched in one shaking hand. You don't get him, she screamed, lunging toward Lila. Adrian moved instinctively, wrapping his arm around Lila, pulling her behind him as Sienna struck. The blade slashed through air, missing by inches. She's nothing, Sienna shrieked. I saved you, Adrian, years ago on that street when no one else would. Adrian froze, a memory stirred. A girl, a scuffle, a helping hand he barely remembered. That was you? He asked, stunned. Sienna nodded, rain and tears mixing on her face. I loved you then, she said, and I love you still. Lila reached for Adrian's hand, her voice steady and clear. Let her go, Adrian. She's already lost. He nodded and held Sienna in place until Theo arrived with officers behind him. The room lit up with red and blue. The cuffs snapped around her wrists as her screams echoed, broken and obsessed. She was dragged away. Minutes later, a new figure appeared in the doorway, his cane tapping like a metronome of power. Henry Wolf. Vivian at his side, smug and smiling. What the devil is this circus? Henry growled. And why is she still here? Vivian stepped forward. Your grandson has lost his mind. He's abandoning his wife, me. Adrian stood tall, Lila at his side. She's lying, he said, handing Theo a file. There was no marriage, just forged papers and blackmail. Henry opened the folder. His frown deepened with every page. Finally, he looked at Vivian, his voice like thunder. Out, and don't come near this family again. Vivian blinked, stumbled, Her heels clicked a sharp rhythm of retreat as she fled into the storm. Henry turned back, studying Lila. "You're the real one, eh?" he muttered. Then his voice softened. "Good. Keep him in check." And with that, he left, cane tapping back into the night. The rain slowed. Adrian turned to Lila, taking her hand. 3 days, he said. Then no more secrets. She smiled, hazel eyes bright. "No more running," she whispered, and they kissed, soft at first, then with all the fire they had once buried. Outside, the storm faded into silence. Inside, something new had begun. 3 days passed. Lila woke to sunlight spilling through the Portland windows, soft and gold. The chaos of the past weeks felt distant now, washed away by time, truth, and healing. Adrian lay beside her, one arm draped over her waist, his breathing slow and even. She studied him, memorizing the way his features softened in sleep. How unreal it still felt that he was hers, truly hers. The divorce paperwork was finalized yesterday. What began as a contract was now a choice. She slipped from bed quietly, the floor cool beneath her feet. In the kitchen, Clara was already at the stove, stirring a pot of oatmeal, her silver hair catching the morning light. "Morning, honey," she said, glancing over her shoulder. "Your man still snoring?" Lila leaned on the counter, smiling. "Yeah, he's exhausted." Clara chuckled, spooning breakfast into bowls. "Wild week's an understatement. That boy walked through fire for you." Lila's cheeks flushed, her heart full. "He really did." She set the table, the soft clink of dishes grounding the quiet. Clara sat, her eyes narrowing with mischief. "So, you two sticking it out this time? No more fake marriage nonsense?" Lila met her gaze, voice firm. "No more fakes, it's real now." Adrian shuffled in, hair mussed, wearing one of Clara's borrowed sweaters. He kissed Lila's cheek before sliding into a chair. "Smells amazing," he said. Clara placed a bowl in front of him with a sly grin. "Treat her right, Mr. CEO. I want great-grandbabies before I'm ancient." Adrian laughed, a real laugh this time. Deep, joyful, home. Adrian grinned, glancing at Clara. "Working on it," he said. They ate breakfast together, laughter filling the cozy kitchen. Clara teased Adrian about his big city habits, and he fumbled through his flustered comebacks while Lila laughed, eyes crinkling with joy. It was a simple scene. But for them, it was everything. A family, stitched from unlikely threads, frayed but whole. Back at Wolf Dynamics, Lila's design went live. The app was a hit, buzzing across Rainmere, praised for its warmth and intuitive touch. Her name was on the launch banner. Her sketches, once scribbled in the corners of notebooks, now lived on screens across the city. She wasn't just an intern anymore. She was a designer. Adrian watched from across the meeting room as she presented, her voice calm, her presence steady. Pride swelled in his chest, wordless and bright. Megan, gone, awaiting trial. Vivian, vanished. Her tricks, dust. Even Henry Wolf stopped by, his cane tapping the tile as he entered the conference room. "Knew she was a keeper," he muttered, patting Adrian's shoulder with a gruff smirk. "Don't mess it up, boy." Adrian smirked back, not planning to. That evening, he brought Layla to the rooftop of his penthouse. The city glowed below them, lights twinkling like stars caught in glass. He pulled a small box from his coat pocket and opened it. Inside, a silver necklace, delicate with a single hazel gemstone. "To match your eyes," he said, clasping it gently around her neck. "A promise. No more secrets, no more hiding." Leela touched the pendant, her fingers trembling slightly. "You didn't have to," she whispered. "I wanted to," he said. "You're my home, Lila. Took me too long to see it." She stepped closer, her eyes shimmering. "You're mine too. From that first text, I think." They stood there in the soft breeze, the world hushed around them. She thought of Maplewood, of Clara's laughter, of the dark warehouse that nearly stole her away. He thought of Henry's will, of the empire he almost lost, of the woman who saved him, without ever meaning to. "We started as strangers," she murmured, resting her head against his chest. "Yeah," he said, arms wrapping around her. "And now, we're everything." Their kiss was slow, certain. The necklace cool against her skin, the city lights dancing around them, a symbol of a love forged in fire. Months passed. Life settled into a new shape. Lila now split her time between Portland and Rainmere. Her designs continued to flourish. Her heart had found its place. Adrian's edges softened. His penthouse, once a cold fortress of ambition, became a home filled with warmth, with color, with her. Clara visited often, her health steady, her stories unstoppable. Even Henry dropped by from time to time, grumbling about traffic but lingering over Lila's latest sketches with a twinkle in his eye. They built something real. Quietly, steadily, day by day. A life they never expected but couldn't imagine losing. What began as a contract became a choice, a lie that led to something truer than either of them believed they deserved. Lila, the dreamer from Maplewood. Adrian, the heir of Wolf Dynamics. Two souls who collided through chance, survived secrets, and walked through storms to find each other at last. And now, as the sun dipped behind the skyline, painting Rainmere in gold, they stood side by side, not just husband and wife by law, but by love, by choice, by everything that matters.